Hello everybody, welcome back. This is Oceanus again. I am uploading a little bit more frequently. This is my second video today, and the reason why I'm doing this is just, I don't know, I have time, and I can share my thoughts on some things, but what I'm going to talk about today is basically a retrospective of certain predictions that I have made over the past couple years in geopolitics that just didn't happen or come to pass or weren't very I don't know, we just weren't didn't turn out to be correct. So most of these conclusions were made with the assumption that strategies wouldn't change or conflict would eventually evolve as more factors weighed in. And I'm mainly talking about my foreign analysis here, and as I continue deeper into this piece, you'll understand what I mean. Like all of you, I'm a human being. I have no magical foresight ability. I can only make predictions based upon logical actions and reactions to those actions. As you probably know, there have been a few high-profile conflicts going on in the world over the past few years. I'm mainly talking about the Russian special military operation in Ukraine, Israel's war in Gaza, and the wider Axis of Resistance war on Israel in response. I have written about each of these conflicts at least once, and in doing so made some assumptions and predictions that didn't hold up, at least as of right now. Yeah, things can change, but I think my predictions would have come to pass way before now if they were going to happen at all. So I'm going to start with the largest one so far, the Russian special military operation in Ukraine. It's been going on since 2022. While the Russians gained a lot of ground in the opening months of the conflict, advancement has slowed in the years since. During the initial attacks on Crimea and the Kirk Bridge back in 2023, I had thought that the current status of the special military operation would be upgraded to a counter-terrorism operation, giving the Russian military much more leeway in their attacks. As you know, it has been almost 3 years now, and no such upgrade has occurred. I had also predicted that we would see a greater assault from Ukraine's northern border. This could still happen, but it is a strike against me because it has not happened in the months since making said prediction. There was an instance in March of 2024 where a suicide drone rammed into a Russian airbase in Transnistria, a small country in between Moldova and Ukraine. The country is home to a Russian ammunition depot. I had thought that the Russians would open a front from Transnistria, but so far that has not happened. There really hasn't been any word about the status of Transnistria since then. There has been an election in Moldova, and I think the pro-EU side won, but nothing out of Transnistria since that happened. I had also predicted a front opening from Belarus, a staunch ally of the Russian Federation. Again, this is still a possibility, but so far there has been no evidence that a front will open up from that direction. Belarus was used very early on in the special military operation as a staging ground for invading Russian forces, but since the Russian withdrawal from the Kiev front, Belarus has not really been used as a launch pad for ground operations since. Soon after writing about Transnistria, the terrorist attack on Crocus City Music Hall in Moscow happened. Multiple people were killed in this attack. Many had speculated that Ukrainian operatives were responsible for training these terrorists. I had thought that this would be the tipping point for a formal declaration of war, but no change in the status of the special military operation was announced. What did end up happening, however, was an aerial campaign against the Ukrainian energy sector. The Russians had largely avoided energy targets before. Perhaps my biggest miss of the entire ordeal was Yevgeny Prigozhin's role in the special military operation. Prigozhin, CEO of the Wagner Group, was killed, presumably by Russia, after an attempted march on Moscow. Prigozhin was upset at the shelling of a Wagner base by Russian regular forces. In response, he peacefully took a bunch of Wagner guys armed with tanks and weapons to go give Putin a piece of his mind. There was no clash between Wagner and Russian soldiers, however. An agreement was reached, and Wagner was pulled out of the special military operation area. Prigozhin thought he was safe. He thought wrong, and ended up being blasted out of the sky while on his plane over Russia. From an outside perspective, I thought the whole ordeal was silly. Prigozhin had a valid complaint. He needed more supplies, and he wanted the Ministry of Defense to stop shelling his camps. Wagner was very effective on the battlefield during this time. And I'm still quite salty at Putin over this. The guy took out one of the people who actually wanted to win the war instead of engaging in theatrics. The Prigozhin debacle really soured me on Putin. As of now, Wagner is stationed in Belarus, waiting for who knows what. We shall see what the future holds with Russia and Ukraine. And my next conflict area I'm going to talk about is the Israel, Palestine, and Iran. I'm putting these three in the same category because they are all tied together. Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th, 2023. Gradually, over the course of a year, the war between Israel and Hamas expanded, with other regional actors getting in on the action. These other regional actors being the Houthis in Yemen, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and various other minor militia groups in Syria and Iraq. All of these groups would come into conflict with Israel by the end of 2023. At the beginning of the war in Gaza, I had predicted that it would expand to a wider war in the Middle East. I was worried that the US would become more involved than we should be, with our ships being stationed off of the coast and open to anti-ship missiles. I had assumed that the greater axis of resistance would be more bold in their resolve to defend the Gazans and that we would see open attacks on American military assets by these groups. Aside from the Houthis, which we had to police in order to open up shipping in the Red Sea, these outright attacks on American assets never occurred. Hezbollah itself didn't start taking the war seriously until late winter, early spring of 2024, in which we saw greater rocket launches against Israeli positions in northern Israel. Hezbollah did a good job of keeping the Israelis pinned down in their north. That was, at least, until Netanyahu stopped listening to Gallant and started becoming more aggressive and underhanded in his methods. The pager explosions weren't a crippling blow, but it did disorient the organization somewhat. The end of Hezbollah was a massive threat to Israel came with the assassination of higher leadership, including Hassan Nasrallah. I admit I did not see the death of Nasrallah coming, at least as soon as it did. Ever since the death of Hezbollah's senior leadership and the sustained air and ground campaign in Lebanon, northern Israel has, for the most part, returned to normal as Israelis were allowed to return to their settlements. Another L for me. I had predicted Hezbollah would lasting longer. This brings us to Iran. Iran had, since the start of the Gaza war, set red lines. Israel crossed every single one of them, from attacking Lebanon to bombing their Syrian embassy to carrying out an assassination attempt on Iranian soil. Each time, Iran had promised a response, and each time they delivered a response that was underwhelming, to say the least. Their initial operations, called True Promise 1 and 2, while being amazing spectacles in rocketry, were ultimately just that, a glorified fireworks show that did little damage. We warned you, we can do this, don't push us or you'll get it for real. These did nothing to deter the Israelis from attacking their proxy forces or Iran itself. As of today, the Israelis have attacked Iran directly twice. First in October and second during the 12-day war, if you could even call it a war, that occurred in June. Granted, the Iranian response during the 12-day conflict was somewhat substantial and they did a bit of damage, but it was nowhere near the 10 billion missiles. Of course, that's an exaggeration, but you get the point, that they said they would rain down on Israel should they ever be attacked directly. For whatever reason, the Iranians really do not want a confrontation with the Israelis. This isn't a fault. No nation should openly want a war, but my goodness, when your military leadership is just getting picked off one by one, I would expect a bit more urgency. To be fair, perhaps it was the change in leadership that has caused Iran to be more cautious. Nobody expected President Raisi to die in a helicopter crash. The reformists won the emergency election, and they seem to want to focus more on negotiation than building up the axis of resistance, as was policy before Raisi's death. Perhaps there is still some hope from the reformists that Iran and the United States could come to some sort of agreement, and then that is why they are hesitant to strike even when attacked. Though the Supreme Leader is supposed to have the ultimate say when it comes to foreign affairs, so who knows what the strategy is here. Something else I need to mention before I head to the next section. Syria. I did not expect President Bashar al-Assad to fall from power in December. For a while, it looked like the situation in Syria had stabilized, and that the regime change project there had failed. Little did I know that Turkey was going to have their proxies make this last hurrah charge towards Damascus, and that the Syrian Arab army, or at least the officer class, had seemingly lost the will to fight. It is a shame, though, because Syria had the potential to become a stable nation under Assad, and now we get Jelani and whatever Ismailist mess his government is. One of those elections, my guy. And the last conflict I predicted, and I'm going to be talking about in this video, is India and Pakistan. Now, while there has been tensions in the Kashmir region for years and wars have broke out over it before, the almost war that happened in May seemed to come out of nowhere with everything else going on. India launched their Operation Sindoor to revenge the lives lost in the terrorist attack that occurred in Kashmir on April 22nd. They blamed the Pakistani government and reacted accordingly. The operation resulted in civilian deaths, causing Pakistan to respond. Every day, both sides were either launching missiles at each other or firing artillery across the border regions. Eventually, it got to the point where Pakistan was about to summon the National Command Authority, which deals with nuclear weapons, and America quickly got involved that night and enforced a ceasefire. I avoided writing about this one because I wanted to see where it went before I made any big claims, and I'm glad I did. I had a hunch that it would go nuclear. These are two countries that absolutely hate each other and somehow possess access to nuclear weapons. Why would India and Pakistan have these things? I have no clue, but it sucks. Thankfully, it didn't, and I legitimately thought we were going to see the great scam called demise of 2025, if you know what I mean. Of course, I'm glad that my prediction was wrong. Nuclear war between Pakistan and India, even if small in scale, would devastate the subcontinent and create an unprecedented refugee crisis. Now, this is just a quick recap of things that didn't end up coming to pass. I've been quite busy over the past few weeks, and I apologize I haven't been uploading or writing as much as I used to. Seems like when I get one thing done, 10 more things pop up. It is important to note that these conflicts are still ongoing, so there's always a chance for escalation if people are stupid. The term ceasefire is important, as it doesn't always mean a lasting peace. I will say, though, if you are big into meme culture, Team Nothing Ever Happens is winning big time right now. Even when something happens, nothing happens. Remember though, Team Nothing Ever Happens only has to be right every time. Team Happening only has to be right once. Thank you for listening today, guys, and I will try and be back again maybe tomorrow, maybe a couple days. I have uploaded like 3 times in a day, so we'll see what happens. Happy Halloween, everybody.